Have you ever wondered what weight you carry on your shoulders? I'm not speaking only of visible responsibilities, work, bills, obligations, but of that invisible burden pressing in silence, the anxiety that never rests, the fear of failing, the feeling that everything depends on you. And what if we said that this burden has a name, a face, a myth that echoes through the ages? That name is Atlas. In Greek mythology, Atlas was condemned by the gods to carry the heavens upon his shoulders forever. Imagine that fate, never resting, never setting the weight down, never allowing yourself to collapse, an eternal punishment, and yet a powerful symbol of human resilience. Atlas cannot choose his burden, but he can choose to bear it. And that's where stoic philosophy meets myth. Life will give us inevitable loads, but how we face them determines whether we are crushed or strengthened. Think of your own life. How many times have you felt like Atlas, suffocated by the accumulation of tasks, expectations, and silent demands? The pressure to be strong for everyone, to never show weakness, to keep moving, even when you were falling apart inside. Mental health often breaks here when we try to deny the weight, pretend it doesn't exist, or carry it alone without reflection. But the truth is, the weight will always be there. And as shadow psychology teaches us, what we refuse to face ends up controlling us. The first principle that arises from Atlas is simple, yet profound: to accept the inevitable weight of existence. That doesn't mean surrendering in despair, but recognizing that some burdens cannot be avoided. Loss, responsibility, the passage of time. When we deny this fact, we live in constant rebellion against reality. But when we accept it, as Atlas accepted the sky, a new strength is born, the strength to endure without breaking. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It's not things themselves that trouble us, but our opinions about them." Atlas couldn't change his fate, but he could decide not to revolt against it forever. So it is with us. We cannot control all events, but we can control our attitude toward them. The weight is inevitable. Let it be the teacher that trains our resilience. Atlas lives today in every person who silently holds their world together. The single mother raising her children alone, the young worker studying through exhaustion, the elder who keeps caring for others despite a weakening body. Each is a modern Atlas, finding in acceptance a quiet power, the understanding that weight does not have to be denied, nor turned into despair. It can become a school. Shadow psychology compares this process to facing what we avoid most. The sky that Atlas carries can be seen as our personal and collective shadows: guilt, fear, pain, repressed. To carry them consciously is different from being crushed by them unconsciously. The difference lies in awareness. When we say to ourselves, "Yes, this is my burden, and I recognize it," we are no longer victims. We become participants in our own crossing. Mental health begins here, not when we run from the weight, but when we learn to name it. Atlas teaches that strength is not living without burdens. That's impossible, but sustaining the inevitable with steadiness and dignity. The weight you carry may be immense, but remember, it is not only a punishment, it is also a path. Just as Atlas holds the sky, you can hold your life, not by denying pain, but by transforming it into inner discipline. Because accepting the weight is the beginning of freedom. What happens when the weight doesn't lessen? When the days pile up, responsibilities don't cease, and life seems to demand more than you can give. That's when Atlas's story deepens. He didn't just accept the sky, he learned how to resist without breaking. The image is symbolic. Atlas doesn't collapse, doesn't beg for mercy. He remains, not because he is invulnerable, but because he discovered the art of endurance within limits. Even the condemned Titan found ways to cope. When Hercules needed the golden apples from the garden of the Hesperides, Atlas helped him, and for a brief moment, the Titan handed over his burden. That moment reminds us, endurance is not absolute rigidity. It's also the wisdom to recognize when to pause and share the weight. In modern life, We confuse endurance with denial of fragility. We believe that being strong means never stopping, never crying, never asking for help. But that is not resilience. It's hardening, okay? And everything that hardens too much eventually breaks. True strength, as Jung suggested, belongs to those who can fall and rise again, who recognize their limits without losing their path. Look around our world. Professionals working until burnout. People pushing through exhaustion until their bodies collapse. Minds crushed under pressure because they never learned to pause. Atlas reminds us that resistance only exists when we know our boundaries. Epictetus said, "It's not the events that destroy us, but how we respond to them. When we deny our limits, we build an inner prison. Okay? When we recognize them, the weight becomes training. Okay? Like muscles that grow through effort and rest. The mind also needs balance between tension and release. The sky on our shoulders represents all the pressures we can't abandon: family, work, emotional wounds. The secret is not escaping the weight, but finding the right posture to carry it. Mental discipline, body awareness, and the humility to ask for help when needed. Even Atlas did. In psychology, this is called self-regulation, the ability to notice internal signals before collapse, to sense tension before crisis, fatigue before breakdown, and adjust before the fall. To resist is not to endure until breaking. It is to cultivate awareness to prevent the unbearable. The Stoics taught that life always demands effort, but there is a difference between effort that strengthens and effort that destroys. True resilience is rhythm, not rigidity, the balance between work and rest, silence and expression. This is Atlas's second principle. To resist without breaking is an act of wisdom, not pride, because real strength is flexible, like a tree that survives storms, not because it's rigid, but because it bends with the wind. Have you noticed how time turns everything into silence? The pains that once seemed unbearable may now be only scars. The joys that once burned intensely are now gentle memories. Time, like an immovable rock, teaches us not with haste, but with constancy. Okay? And that is exactly what we find in Atlas. The weight as a silent teacher. The Titan does not speak. He does not complain. He does not beg forgiveness from the gods, nor plead for mercy. Atlas simply endures. And in that posture lies a deep lesson. Some pains are not resolved with words, but through patient resistance. How often in life do we wish pain would disappear instantly? A loss, an abrupt ending, a disappointment that tears us apart. We crave shortcuts, quick answers, promises of instant healing. But the truth is that some crossings can only be completed through time, and time itself often feels like a heavy rock upon our shoulders. In shadow psychology, Jung said that what we refuse to face always returns in cycles. It's the trauma we never treat, the grief we avoid, the emptiness we cover with distractions. And time, patient like Atlas, forces us to face these inner stones. Ignoring them is useless. Sooner or later, they return to weigh us down. Stoicism reminds us that we cannot control the duration of life's storms, but we can learn from them. Epictetus said that difficulties reveal character, and perhaps that is what Atlas's silence shows us. It is not the weight that shapes the person, but how they choose to carry it through time. In daily life, this principle reveals itself in quiet yet profound ways. The student who endures months of study before a decisive exam. The patient who spends years in therapy before seeing real healing. It's a grieving soul who discovers, little by little, that emptiness does not disappear, but transforms into a bearable longing. Time is harsh, but fair. It doesn't rush. It doesn't bargain. It opens no shortcuts. It teaches through repetition and persistence. And just as Atlas learns to hold the sky day after day, we too must learn to carry our burdens without expecting instant miracles. Mental health strengthens precisely through this process, not when pain suddenly vanishes, but when we learn to coexist with it until it loses its power. Resilience is not suffering. It is suffering without allowing suffering to destroy us. And that act of patience is the art of transforming weight into wisdom. Perhaps that is why the image of Atlas is so powerful. There is no grand victory, no epic battle, only constancy. The sky does not become lighter, but Atlas becomes stronger. So do we. Grief does not vanish, but we learn to breathe with it. Anxiety doesn't disappear overnight, but we create routines that sustain us. Sadness remains, but it no longer drowns us as before. Weight and time together shape us. Each cycle endured becomes another layer of rock, quietly making us stronger. This is the third principle of Atlas. Life is carried in the rhythm of time, and pain can be transformed into wisdom when we refuse to stop resisting. The weight you carry today may not vanish tomorrow, but if you allow it, it will become your teacher. And in that silence, in the slow and inevitable rhythm of time, you may discover that even the shadows can teach. Why is it that some people can cross through tragedy and emerge stronger, while others are lost within it? It's one of humanity's oldest questions. And Atlas, with his eternal weight, offers a powerful metaphor. Pain, when reinterpreted, can become purpose. The Titan had no choice. He was condemned to hold the sky. He could have become a mere symbol of despair. But instead, he became an image of endurance. Atlas is remembered not for his lament, but for his posture, the being who sustains the burden that no one else could bear. And here lies the fourth principle. When a burden cannot be removed, it can still be integrated as meaning. In modern psychology, Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and survivor of the concentration camps, said that those who have a why can bear almost any how. A suffering without meaning paralyzes, but suffering that finds meaning becomes a source of strength. Cleese shows us this. His endless pain became a cosmic purpose to uphold the order of the world. How many times in our own lives do we carry burdens that seem absurd? A mother caring for a child with a rare illness without rest or reprieve, yet finding in her struggle an unshakable source of love. A young person who endures deep depression and later transforms that pain into guidance for others. A professional who, after losing everything, rebuilds life through helping others not repeat his mistakes. In each of these stories, Atlas lives on, the burden transformed into mission. In shadow psychology, this is called integration. The shadow doesn't disappear, it becomes creative power. Pain isn't denied or forgotten. It is faced, named, embraced, and then converted into vital energy. Thus, trauma becomes compassion, loss becomes wisdom, emptiness becomes a search for transcendence. Stoicism doesn't ask us to ignore suffering, but to use it as a teacher. Seneca wrote, "No wind favors the sailor who knows no port." If the weight is already on our shoulders, why not use it as direction? Why not make it a compass pointing toward something greater than ourselves? Think about how your own pain could be redefined. Anxiety can become the drive for self-knowledge. Loneliness can become a space for authenticity. Grief can become memory that inspires new choices. This is not romanticizing suffering. It's refusing to let it become mere ruin. It's giving it shape, integrating it into the path. Atlas didn't choose to bear the sky, but by accepting the burden, he gave it a place in the cosmos. Without Atlas, the order of the universe might collapse. And so, with us, when we give meaning to our pain, it ceases to be mere weight. It becomes part of the architecture of existence. Mental health strengthens through this process. When we find meaning even in suffering, pain no longer only destroys, it transforms. That is what we call deep resilience, not just to endure, but to grow from what once seemed unbearable. This is Atlas's fourth teaching. We cannot escape all burdens, but we can transform them into purpose. When that happens, what once seemed condemnation becomes creative destiny. So, when you look at the weight you carry, ask yourself, what can this burden teach me? What mission might it reveal? How can I transform the pain that moves through me into something that illuminates not only myself, but the world? Atlas reminds us that even the cruelest burden can belong to a greater order, okay? And perhaps greatness lies precisely in that. To endure not merely out of obligation, but out of purpose. If the body collapses, the mind falters. And if the mind gives in, the body cannot last for long. Atlas reminds us of this. His burden is physical, the sky resting on his shoulders. But it is also psychological, because there is no material weight that does not echo within the soul. In mythology, we see Atlas bent, muscles tense, knees firm, veins strained. The image is clear. To endure requires the body. But behind that body, there is also a mind that must resist. The Titan remains standing not only because he is strong, but because he decides to keep holding. And here lies the fifth principle. True resilience is born from the alliance between body and mind. In modern life, we have forgotten this integration. We rush to handle everything, neglect rest, and rely on artificial energy, coffee, pills, screens. Then we wonder why the mind implodes in anxiety and the body responds with chronic pain, fatigue, or collapse. But there is no strong mind in an exhausted body, just as there is no steady body with a tormented mind. Think of a building. The mind is the architectural design, the vision that guides it. The body is the foundation and the columns that sustain it. Neither stands without the other. Atlas embodies this union, muscles that support, but also consciousness that accepts. Without mind, he would drop the burden. Without body, he would be crushed instantly. In mental health, this is called psychophysical balance. Inner discipline is not only meditation or positive thinking, okay? It is also caring for the body, biological rhythms, breath, sleep, nourishment. K. It is recognizing that the mind needs a healthy physical vessel to remain resilient. Stoicism aligns with this view. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself that the body is part of nature and must be cared for with simplicity and discipline. He did not preach indulgence, but neither did he advocate disdain for the body, because even the clearest mind weakens when the flesh can no longer endure. Shadow psychology expands this idea. To ignore the body is to deny a part of who we are. When we repress physical needs, we reinforce the same mechanism of repression that fuels psychic wounds. Integration begins with recognition. I am body and I am mind, inseparable. In daily life, this translates into simple yet transformative practices. Recognize the signs of fatigue before collapse. Understand that sleep is not a waste of time, but a recovery of strength. Use deep breathing as an anchor in moments of anxiety. Remember that physical exercise is not vanity. It is a tool to keep the mind steady. Atlas shows us that to carry the sky requires more than strength. It requires discipline. Okay? And discipline is not punitive rigidity. It is constant, intentional care. Okay? It is the rhythm that protects the mind from chaos and the body from exhaustion. In life, we all have our own skies to carry, some visible, others invisible. But if we learn to sustain them not only with muscle, nor only with thought, but with the harmony of both, the weight ceases to be a sentence of ruin and becomes an exercise in integration. This is the fifth teaching of Atlas. The burden is not overcome by brute force, nor by the mind alone, but by the harmony between a disciplined body and a conscious mind. And when we achieve this alliance, we discovered that even the heaviest weight can be carried without destroying us.